There's a woman who cries in the shower every morning before work. Not because something terrible happened, not because of a crisis, just because another day is starting, and she already knows how it's going to feel. She's been doing this for 2 years. And here's the part that should make you stop. She has options. She has skills. She has savings. She's not trapped in any material sense. But she cannot leave. This isn't a story about one person. This is happening at scale, right now, across industries, income levels, and generations. Millions of people are staying in jobs they know are hurting them. And the question nobody's really answering is, why? Because the easy answer is money. It's always money. But money doesn't explain the Google engineer who joined one of the most prestigious companies on earth and felt immediate, crushing disappointment and still showed up the next day. It doesn't explain the LinkedIn employee sharing their fears about layoffs in public forums while simultaneously updating their resume and then staying. It doesn't explain the pattern that researchers keep finding over and over again, that the more toxic a workplace becomes, the harder it is for people to leave it. That's not logical, but it is deeply, uncomfortably human. Let's start with something called the sunk cost trap. Most of us have heard of sunk cost fallacy. You've already invested so much, so you keep going even when you should stop. But in the context of work, it goes much deeper than just time or money. People invest identity in their jobs. When you've spent 3 years building a reputation at a company, learning its language, earning the trust of certain colleagues, and slowly becoming the person who knows how things work. Leaving means dismantling a version of yourself, and the brain reads identity loss the same way it reads physical threat. Same neural pathways, same cortisol spike. This is why high achievers are often the most trapped. The more you've built at a place, the more leaving feels like losing. But there's another layer here that almost nobody talks about. Trauma bonding. We associate that term with abusive relationships. But the psychological mechanism is identical in toxic workplaces. When an environment is intermittently punishing and rewarding, when a manager is sometimes cruel and sometimes generous, when the culture oscillates between pressure and praise, the nervous system doesn't learn to detach. It learns to crave resolution. You keep waiting for the moment it gets better. And that waiting becomes its own kind of attachment. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement. Slot machines use it. Toxic relationships use it. And apparently, modern workplaces have accidentally, or not so accidentally, mastered it. The quarterly review that's sometimes devastating and sometimes glowing. The manager who tears you down in a meeting and then pulls you aside to say they believe in you. The company that announces layoffs and then throws a celebration event 2 weeks later. Your nervous system doesn't know what's coming, and when you don't know what's coming, you stay alert. You stay present. You stay. Now here's the part that gets darker. The economic climate right now is doing something specific to this psychology. Layoffs are rising. Offer rescissions are happening. People are watching colleagues lose jobs with almost no warning. And what that does to the people who remain is, it doesn't make them feel relieved to still have work. It makes them feel afraid to move. This is called the scarcity freeze. When the job market feels uncertain, the perceived risk of leaving your current position inflates dramatically. Even a bad job starts to feel like an asset. Even a toxic environment starts to feel like shelter. And so people who were already psychologically tethered become economically frozen as well. 2 traps layered on top of each other. Here's what's interesting, though. Studies on workplace psychology consistently show that people dramatically overestimate the risk of leaving and dramatically underestimate the cumulative damage of staying. One study found that chronic workplace stress is associated with a 50% increase in the risk of cardiovascular disease. Another found that employees in high-demand, low-control environments, which is basically the definition of most modern toxic workplaces, are significantly more likely to experience depression than the general population. But here's the thing. Those statistics don't feel real when you're inside the situation. Because one of the defining features of a toxic work environment is that it slowly, systematically degrades your ability to accurately assess your own situation. You get so used to the baseline that you forget what normal feels like. You stop knowing how tired you actually are. You stop knowing how much you've changed. And you certainly stop trusting your own instincts about what you deserve. This is by design in some organizations. Not conspiratorial design necessarily, just the natural output of cultures that reward overwork, punish boundaries, and frame exhaustion as dedication. When staying looks like strength and leaving looks like weakness, you stay. There's also the identity question that never gets enough airtime. For a lot of people, particularly millennials who were told that passion and career should be the same thing, there's a specific kind of grief that comes with admitting a job isn't working. Because it's not just admitting the job is bad, it's admitting that the version of yourself you built around that job might have been a mistake. And we will endure enormous amounts of pain to avoid that conclusion. We'll rationalize. We'll reframe. We'll find small wins to focus on. We'll tell ourselves it's temporary. It's a stepping stone. It builds character. Because the alternative is to sit with the discomfort of having chosen wrong. And that, for a generation raised on the idea that your career is your purpose, is almost unbearable. So here's the central insight of all of this. Staying in a toxic job is not weakness. It's not stupidity. It's not laziness. It is an entirely predictable response to a perfect storm of psychological mechanisms. Identity investment, intermittent reinforcement, scarcity freeze, and grief avoidance. All happening simultaneously, all pulling in the same direction. The systems around us, economic, corporate, cultural, have created conditions that make staying feel rational even when leaving is necessary. And the cruelest part? The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to see clearly. Because the environment that's hurting you is also the environment shaping how you see yourself. So if you've ever wondered why you can't leave something you know isn't right, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you're human. And the trap was built for humans. The question worth sitting with isn't, why can't I leave? It's, what would I need to believe about myself to make leaving feel possible? Because that's where it actually starts. Not with a new resume, not with a better job offer, with a different story about who you are. And that story, nobody can give you that. But understanding why you've been telling yourself the old one, that's the beginning of something.